Shakespeare's Macbeth, despite being written hundreds of years ago, is a piece of literature as poignant today as it was when first performed in 1606. The story of a man corrupted by his own ambition manages to still captivate audiences and explore many complex themes, including those of power, destiny, appearances versus reality, and more. However, perhaps the most prominent thematic element in Macbeth is its exploration of good versus evil. Throughout its 5 acts, Macbeth tackles some of literature's most enduring questions in regards to morality. Are humans inherently good or evil, and what motivates them towards which course? Macbeth's answers to these questions stand the test of time, with similar stories and actions being reflected in external pieces of literature and even in real-life events. In this presentation, I will explore how, through the evolving characterizations of its leading characters, Macbeth proves that although humans are inherently good, fear and temptations of power and success can challenge their inherent goodness and lead them astray. Macbeth then reinforces the reasons behind why humans are good by emphasizing the fleeting nature of external deductions and subsequently stressing the idea that success achieved by evil means will never satisfy an individual, as inherent human nature and morality are too intertwined for that to be a reality. In the beginning of the play, Macbeth is characterized as an upright man. He's initially opposed to his own cruel thought of killing Duncan, questioning why he'd even begin to consider killing Duncan as a means of obtaining the throne. This answers one important question. Why does Macbeth, who is seen by those around him as full of kindness and great love, a man trustworthy enough to be given full responsibility by the betrayed King Duncan, succumb to his evil thoughts? Macbeth's inherent goodness and his sense of morality is corrupted by his desire for power. When given a sense by the witches of what he could be, he falls into the trap of not being able to stop pondering how effectively he can achieve that fate. Even so, after his soliloquy in Act 1, where he initially decides against killing Duncan on the grounds of the latter being too pure to receive such a fate, Lady Macbeth manipulates him into committing the crime. Her cruel words claim that he is too weak and unpowerful to do so. She rips into his insecurities and uses the power dynamic in their relationship to her advantage. By doing so, a few things are proved. Macbeth does not want to be viewed as weak or unpowerful by having his wife push those perceptions onto him, so those are grounds for him killing Duncan. Secondly, this dynamic reveals that many of Macbeth's actions are motivated by fear. Macbeth wants more than to just be powerful. He's afraid of being perceived as otherwise. Once Macbeth gives into that fear, it's hard to step away. His fear furthers an ambition that causes him to abandon his morals, exemplified by when his fear of Banquo revealing his motives to others causes him to murder Banquo and attempt to kill his innocent son. Macbeth's fear of not having power over his new subjects turns him into a merciless tyrant and leads him to kill Macduff's family in cold blood, which is cause for those who formerly respected him to fully despise him. Macbeth, who was once viewed as a moral, just man, is fully compared to the devil in his abandonment of goodness. This turn to evil out of fear and ambition effectively demonstrates the motivations for why some humans don't act out of goodness. It's emphasized further because Macbeth is naturally juxtaposed with his predecessor, Duncan, who is viewed by everyone in the play as the kindest, purest man. Duncan never abandons his morals. As king, he has achieved as much as any ambition will allow him to, and he has nowhere further to go. Although his position as king invites challenge and there is a fact that others have taken advantage of him in the past, Duncan remains true to his morals because he is unafraid. He is incredibly trusting and loving of everyone to an almost naive extent, and therefore seemingly does not learn a lesson and act more cautiously. However, this also causes him to be an incredibly moral and just king, whose beloved good reign emphasizes the immorality of that of his successor. These comparing characterizations of two men, one who was initially good but was corrupted by fear and power struggle, and one who remained true to his inherent morals because he was not tempted by power or fear, emphasize the inherent good nature of humans and their reasons for abandoning it. The characterization of Lady Macbeth is additionally effective in demonstrating this. Her first appearance in the play is plotting Duncan's death and describing Macbeth's inability to do so based on his kindness and lack of resolve. She seems to have very little humanity and contrasts the typical role of a woman in her time by playing into the more dominant role in her Macbeth's relationship. She's able to manipulate him into killing Duncan by mocking him and playing into his insecurities. She's generally characterized as wicked. She taunts Macbeth's masculinity and questions his loyalty, saying that him breaking a promise to her is unthinkable. She claims that if she had made the promise to do so, she'd even kill her own child. She at numerous points in the play wishes for evil spirits to come upon her, wishes for the milk in her breast to be replaced with gall, and wishes that she could kill Duncan. She holds his hand through killing Duncan and believes that the immorality of their act can be simply washed away. In spite of this cruel characterization, Lady Macbeth's morality is reflected in the few unique ways in the play. Firstly, she recognizes that she cannot kill Duncan because he reminds her of her father as he sleeps. Then, Lady Macbeth's downfall is caused by her guilt over killing Duncan. She realizes that the spirits cannot unsex her or take away any of her inherent human goodness. Despite her greatest wishes, she still held on to the human emotions and inclination towards morality that she had so wished against. Lady Macbeth, despite being portrayed as evil, still has enough of a moral compass in her to be driven to guilt and eventual suicide. After her death, she's described as fiend-like, and the doctor who visits her realizes the only divine intervention can save her soul, as exemplified through her sleepwalking. She clearly retains such tremendous guilt that she's incapacitated. She goes from incredibly powerful to obsessed with what she's done, unable to sleep or get the image of blood out of her mind. It's more to consider why Lady Macbeth was motivated in the first place to evil. She was driven by her ambition. As a woman of her time, she had very little agency over those around her. When given the ability to have power over others, she took it. Her ambition fueled her, but it caused her to try and abandon her human nature. However, she was unable to do so, and her human nature winning over was the eventual cause of her death. As aforementioned, Macbeth emphasizes how goals achieved by evil means are cause for dissatisfaction, and the chaos that results from this is the motivation for why humans stick to their human goodness. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth's downfall represent this. Their success was fleeting. The temptations that seduced them were fleeting and offered them very little resolution. In comparison, characters who stuck with their morals even in the face of threat and an established endangerment from others like Duncan are fully characterized as good. His character achieves success through means that do not violate the inherent human nature of good. Therefore, he is not characterized as immoral, and his finite death and the reactions to it by others are more dignified than that of his successor and his wife. As established, fear and ambition can lead to immorality. An external example of this is the story of Bigger Young and Richard Wright's native son. Bigger is a young black man who has been subjugated and left out by society. Because of his race, impoverished status, and lack of an education, Bigger works in menial labor for the wealthy white family of the Daltons. Bigger's story is marked by his murder of Mary Dalton and subsequent sentence to the death penalty. However, his arc is more complex than a brutal crime against Mary in the service of justice. Bigger has never had any sense of power. His first crime, the murder of Mary, is a result of his fear over what will happen if he's caught in her bedroom, and even though the act in itself is relatively innocent. However, he's so petrified that he unintentionally kills Mary. His disposal of her body is brutal, but is marked by further terror of what will happen if he's found out. This fear is a result of his lack of power and the perceptions of him by those around him. As a poor black man, society will have an inherent bias against him and will be out to get him. What Bigger experiences as a result of getting away with the crime is a new sense of power that drives him to do more things that seemingly abandon morality, like rape and kill Bessie. Bigger is discovered soon after and sentenced to death when he accepts his destiny. Bigger's ending shows how actions motivated by fear and ambition can cause greater turmoil as they do not reflect inherent human morality. However, Bigger's case does differ greatly from that of Macbeth, as Bigger was somewhat justified in worrying about how others would perceive him. While Macbeth had already had a sense of power and was already perceived by others as somewhat upright in society, Bigger never had those same opportunities. His actions were motivated by fear and ambition, but also by an anger not reflected in those of Macbeth. Immoral acts fueled by fear, power struggles, and anger are certainly pertinent in the modern world as well. This is exemplified by a recent surge of Asian hate crimes, which reflects on how, in society, people aren't hesitant to resort to acts of brutality as a means of asserting their power over others. They abandon their inherent humanity because they fear those different from themselves and because their power in society feels threatened. There's a certain level of rage associated with these crimes that is hard to miss. Acts of brutality such as these hate crimes are motivated by the factors that fueled Macbeth and Bigger to a certain extent. All of these cases have different details and circumstances, but there's one thing in common. The end result proves the human return to morality. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth's downfall is caused by immorality and provokes quite a large public reaction. Bigger is sentenced to death, and a major public response to the hate crimes that we are viewing now in society reflect that most of society's morals are still intact, as we question why people commit those hate crimes and we publicly challenge them. It shows that we're ready to question the moral deeds of others, which maintains a natural inclination towards good and answers the question of why humans stay good. And it further exemplifies the natural human inclination towards good, even in the face of evil. Macbeth manages to effectively dive into the complexities of good and evil through the course of 5 acts. It raises questions about what drives people to evil and answers the questions of why people are inclined towards goodness. It effectively does so through the strong characterizations of its leading representations of good, evil, and even gray morality. Macbeth's exploration into human nature remains as pertinent today as it did centuries ago, and one needs only to read more contemporary works of literature or to turn on the news to recognize that Shakespeare's ability in this play to answer some of life's most complex questions about our intricate behavior in regards to morality is a feat, and Macbeth is a perfect answer to the ongoing questions society has about morality and what leads us astray from it. Thank you for listening, and here are my image sources.